Welcome to the Greek for the week. I got carried away and did 3 verses. I'm going to go on to Hebrews 9. And these first 3 verses are very interesting, I think, in Greek, with some very clear structures that various translations do better or worse with it. I think some of them muddle it. I know when I was working on my dissertation on Hebrews and was going through Lincoln Hurst's great book on the potential backgrounds of Hebrews, I felt like he's a good guy. Never met him. He passed a long time ago, but I feel like he completely muddled the grammar here. The grammar is not ambiguous. And again, some of it's that Protestant aversion to allegory. The author of Hebrews is building an allegory. Let's just deal with it. But so let me go ahead with the Greek here. Eke men un kai he prote dikai omata latreas tote hagion kosmikon. All right. So eke is the irregular imperfect of echo. Echo means to have, and eke is it was having. It used to have. I think we could translate it iteratively. It used to have. That's a good imperfect option. The epsilon is a third person singular past tense ending. Yeah. So this is imperfect active indicative, third singular from echo. Couple conjunctions here. Both of them are post positive. They're both procrastinators. They both always arrive late. Men is on the one hand. It sets up a contrast. And in fact, we have a contrast between this verse, which is beginning to talk about the earthly sanctuary. And then a little bit later, it will talk about the heavenly sanctuary. But anyway, on the one hand, therefore, un is therefore, so there's a logical consequence. We've just finished chapter 8, which talks about the increasing obsolescence of the old covenant. The old covenant is about ready to disappear. It's obsolete. It's grown old. It's got old. God's introducing a new covenant. And so therefore, he's going to go on and talk about the new covenant. The first, and the feminine here, what has the previous chapter been talking about? Remember, there was no chapter divisions in the original Hebrews. It was one continuous sermon. In fact, without even spaces between the letters or punctuation, no punctuation. So this is clearly referring to the first covenant, not the first tabernacle. And that's what Hurst went wrong. If you have a translation that says the first tent, that's wrong. The antecedent, again, this is not ambiguous at all in terms of the flow of the Greek. The audience of Hebrews hasn't read what's about to come. They haven't even read it. They've heard it. It's been read aloud to them. They have heard talk about the first covenant. The antecedent, this is a feminine word here. The antecedent is the feminine word covenant, diatheke. And so this is clearly talking about the first covenant. Therefore, on the one hand, the first covenant was having ordinances of worship and a earthly sanctuary, the whole thing. The whole earthly sanctuary was part of the first covenant. The earthly sanctuary is not part of the second covenant. Dikaiomata, that's a neuter plural alpha. Bingo. So, and this is a ma noun, which unlike my ma is neuter. So dikaiomata. Dikaioma dikaios is the root for righteous or justice. And so a dikaioma is a instance of justice, a regulation, a law, something like that. And it's plural. So therefore, the first covenant was therefore having ordinances of worship, genitive singular, and a hagion kosmikon, a worldly sanctuary, an earthly sanctuary, a this world sanctuary. Okay, that's Hebrews 9:1. Let's keep going. Oh, there's my English translation. I put men to, so I could fit it all kind of on one line. I crammed all 3 verses onto one line. So also, therefore, that's in math. We use that three dot triangle as a symbol for therefore. If you had geometry, a long time ago. So it was having therefore on the one hand, also the first covenant ordinances of worship, and a worldly sanctuary. 4, again, postpositive, skenegar kataskuaste he prote en he hete luknia. So 4, the tent, the first, a tent that is the first. So now we're talking about, we've switched from the feminine referring to diatheke, the covenant, to the feminine referring to skene, which means tent or tabernacle. For a first tent was prepared or was constructed, kataskuaste. Theta eta has me thinking aorist passive. It's third singular, there's no ending, so it's kind of hanging out there. That's third singular. The is third singular, kind of hanging out there. The eta here, just kind of hanging out there. No ending really put onto it. This is from kataskuadzo, to construct or to prepare. Now, what's interesting is, again, our assumptions and presuppositions may throw us off. This is not talking about the whole worldly sanctuary. It's going to become very clear when we get to verse 3 that the first tent here is referring to the outer room. Hebrews is, as far as I know, unique among ancient Jewish literature in talking about the first room and the inner room, the outer room and the inner room, as two different tents. You have the first tent and you have the second tent. It's even going to talk about two veils, a veil into the first tent and a veil into the second tent, a veil into the inner room and a veil into the, a veil into the outer room and a veil into the inner room. And of course, what we think of the veil, we think of the veil between the holy place and the most holy place, between the holies and the holy of holies. But Hebrews, again, exegesis says, I've got to listen to what Hebrews says. I got to purge my mind of my assumptions and let Hebrews talk. So for a tent was prepared, that is the first, a tent, in which, relative pronoun, ending without a word, feminine, in which, that is tent. Now, te is an enclitic. It's like, I don't want an accent. Why do I have an accent? You do the accent. So te doesn't have an accent. And so this is really just the article. You might be thinking, oh, that's another relative pronoun, but it's not. It's just he, the word for the feminine word for the, he luknia, the lampstand. The reason why he has an accent is because tet is being a freeloader. I'm not going to do an accent, so he takes up the slack. So tet is also a enclitic or a postpositive, so it comes in translation head before this, in which both the lampstand. Now I put both there, but both isn't quite right. Both is for two things, but there's more than two things here. But it just doesn't make really good English. You might even omit it in your translation if you're creating your own version of the Bible, because both doesn't work. There's more than two items here. So in which, that is in the first tent, was the lampstand, the menorah, kai he trapeza, and the table, kai ho prothesis, tone artone, and the presentation of bread. See, we've got more than two things here, three things there. Although I suppose the presentation of breads is on the table, which hatus legatai hagia, which is called the holies. See, this is not talking about the first tent as in the earthly tent. It's talking about the first tent as in the first room of the earthly sanctuary. That is the outer room, the holies, or the holy place. This is a neuter plural alpha. Bingo. The holies, which is called the holies. All right, that's verse 2. So now we have the inner room, or as Hebrews puts it, the second tent. But after the second veil, meta de to deuteron katepetesma, skene he legomene hagia hagion. So, and after the second veil, this is neuter, so this goes together. After the second veil, a tent, which is called holies of holies, the most holy place. So again, this is a ma noun, which unlike my ma is neuter. After the second tent, after the second veil, I mean, mata with the accusative means after, was, we have to kind of stick that in that, was a tent that is called. So this is participle. Men are passive participles. Leg is the present stem, nothing done to it. So we have a present passive participle, nominative, feminine, singular. The article never lies. The tent, that, Ken's rule, if the participle has the article, use that or who or which. So the tent that is called holies of holies. So Hebrews is setting out the structure of the cosmikon hagion, of the earthly sanctuary here. The earthly sanctuary has two tents, an outer tent and an inner tent, separated by a veil. And Hebrews is going to create an allegory in which these two rooms represent two different ages. You have the first room, which represents the old covenant and the old age, and you have the new room, the inner room, the second tent, that represents the new covenant and the new age dawned by Christ. All right, this has been the Greek of the week.